I never thought I'd be the guy posting in a relationship subreddit about my marriage falling apart. But here we are. I've been reading stories here for years, always thinking, damn, that's rough. Glad that's not my life. Turns out I was just the last one to realize what was really going on. For context, my wife, 32F, and I, 34M, have been together for almost 9 years, married for 6. For most of that time, I genuinely believed we had a solid relationship. We weren't the perfect couple, we argued sometimes, we had stressful periods like everyone else, but I always thought we had honesty between us. That was the one thing I trusted completely, or at least I did. Looking back now, the first cracks were so small that I brushed them off without thinking. My wife has always had a pretty sharp personality. She's blunt, sometimes harsh, and when she's angry she can cut deep with words. But that was just her. I accepted that early in the relationship. The thing is, she also lies. Not huge lies at first, just little ones. Small things that don't seem important enough to fight about. If she forgot to pay a bill, she'd say the bank messed something up. If she stayed late at work, there was always some random excuse that didn't quite line up. Whenever I questioned it, she'd get defensive immediately. "Why are you interrogating me?" she'd snap. "You're acting paranoid again." And somehow, every time I ended up apologizing. About 8 months ago things started changing more noticeably. She began staying late at work a lot. At first it was once a week, then 3 times a week. Eventually it felt like she was barely home before 9 or 10 p.m. most nights. When I asked about it, she said her department was short-staffed. Except something about it didn't sit right with me. Her phone suddenly became private. Before, she'd leave it on the kitchen counter, on the couch, anywhere. Now it was always face down. Always within arm's reach. If a notification popped up, she'd glance at it and flip the screen away like it contained classified information. One night, I walked into the living room and she physically turned her body away while texting. That was the first moment my stomach dropped. Not proof. Not even close. Just a feeling. And I hated how quickly she shut me down when I mentioned it. "Seriously?" she said, rolling her eyes. "You're jealous of my phone now?" I laughed it off at the time because I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid husband imagining problems that didn't exist. But over the next few weeks, things got stranger. Random weekend work emergencies. Last-minute plans with coworkers I'd never heard of. Stories that changed slightly every time she told them. Little details that didn't line up. Still, I kept telling myself I was overthinking it. Until the night something happened that I still replay in my head almost every day. Because that was the moment the illusion of my marriage started cracking in ways I couldn't ignore anymore. And the worst part? At that point, I still had no idea how bad things actually were. The first real red flag happened on a random Tuesday night. Nothing dramatic at first, just another one of her late work days. She texted me around 7:30 p.m. saying she had to stay because of some last-minute project deadline. By that point, I'd heard that excuse so many times it barely registered. I replied, "Okay, want me to save you dinner?" She answered about 20 minutes later. "Don't wait up. Might be really late." Pretty normal, right? Except around 9 p.m., I got a message from someone I hadn't talked to in months. An old college friend of mine named Eric. We're not super close anymore, but we still occasionally send memes or random updates. His message was simple. "Hey man, weird question. Is your wife named Sarah?" That already felt strange, but I replied yes. A minute later, he sent another message. "Okay, I might be wrong, but I think I just saw her downtown at Barley House." My stomach dropped instantly. Barley House is about 20 minutes from her office. Not impossible, sure. People go out with coworkers sometimes. But remember, she had just told me she was stuck at work finishing a project. I tried to keep my response casual. "Maybe she's there with coworkers." Eric responded almost immediately. "Yeah, maybe. I just thought it was weird because she looked pretty cozy with some guy." That was the exact phrase he used. Pretty cozy. I stared at that message for a solid minute before replying. "What do you mean cozy?" He sent back, like sitting close, laughing a lot, hand on his arm kind of close. Then he added something that made my chest feel tight. Sorry, man. Didn't want to assume anything. Could just be a friend. At that point, I was sitting on the couch staring at the wall, trying to convince myself there had to be some explanation. Maybe it really was coworkers. Maybe Eric misread the situation. Maybe it wasn't even her. So I did something I hadn't done before. I texted my wife. Hey, how's the project going? 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. Then she replied. Still at the office. Why? My heart started pounding when I read that. Still at the office. Meanwhile, my friend was literally watching her at a bar across town. I showed Eric the message and asked if he was sure it was her. He didn't respond with words. He sent me a photo. It wasn't the clearest picture in the world. Taken quickly, probably from across the room, but it was clear enough. It was my wife, sitting at a table, leaning toward some guy I had never seen before, smiling in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in months, and her hand was resting on his arm. I remember my brain going completely quiet for a moment, like everything just froze, because suddenly all those little weird things over the past months, the late nights, the phone secrecy, the changing stories, they didn't feel small anymore. They started forming a pattern. But the craziest part? Even then, I still tried to convince myself it wasn't what it looked like. Until about an hour later, when something happened that made the situation way worse. After Eric sent the photo, I just sat there staring at my phone like my brain couldn't process what I was looking at. It was definitely her. Same jacket she wore that morning. Same hair. Same bracelet I bought her last Christmas. And she was definitely not at work. But even with the evidence right in front of me, my brain kept trying to find excuses. Maybe it was a coworker. Maybe the project finished early and they went out for drinks. Maybe she just didn't want to explain the whole situation over text. So I decided to test something. I texted her again. Sounds rough. When do you think you'll be done? Another long pause. Then she replied, probably around 11. Still a lot to finish. My chest tightened reading that, because according to Eric, she had already been sitting at that bar for almost an hour. Still, I didn't confront her right away. I wanted to see how far she would take the lie. Around 10:15 p.m. Eric texted again. Dude, they just left together. I immediately called him. Left together how? I asked. He hesitated for a second. Like, they walked out together. He had his hand on her lower back. That sentence felt like someone punched me in the stomach. Eric kept talking. They didn't look drunk or anything, just laughing. They walked toward the parking lot. I remember pacing around my living room while he described everything. What does the guy look like? I asked. Tall, dark hair, maybe mid-30s. Looks like a gym guy. Then Eric added something that made things even worse. Honestly, man, they looked like a couple. That was the moment the denial finally started cracking. Because coworkers don't usually leave bars together with someone's hand on their back like that. But I still didn't say anything to her. Instead, I decided to wait. Around 11:30 p.m., the front door opened. She walked in like everything was completely normal. Keys on the counter. Shoes off. Jacket hung up. Hey, she said casually. Sorry I'm so late. Work was insane. I was sitting on the couch watching her the whole time. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. But I kept my voice calm. Long night. She sighed dramatically and dropped into a chair. You have no idea. The project from hell. And then she started telling me a full story. About spreadsheets. Deadlines. A coworker who messed everything up. A manager breathing down everyone's neck. Details. Lots of details. And the entire time I was sitting there thinking, you were at a bar an hour ago with another man. The craziest part? She didn't hesitate. Not once. No nervousness. No stumbling over her words. Just lie after lie, delivered like it was the most normal thing in the world. At that moment, I realized something that honestly scared me. If Eric hadn't randomly seen her that night, I would have believed every word. But what happened 2 days later is what really blew the situation wide open. Because that's when I discovered something that made the bar incident look small in comparison. and it happened completely by accident. For the next 2 days, I acted like nothing had happened. And let me tell you, pretending everything is normal while your brain is screaming that something is wrong is exhausting. I watched her more closely than I ever had before. She was completely calm. No guilt. No weird behavior. No signs that she had any idea I knew about the bar. If anything, she seemed extra normal. Talking about work, complaining about traffic, asking what I wanted for dinner. At one point, she even joked about planning a weekend trip together. It was surreal. Part of me kept thinking, maybe Eric misunderstood something. But then I'd remember the photo, and the way she lied straight to my face that night. 2 days later, Thursday morning, something happened that pushed everything further. My wife overslept. That almost never happens. She's usually the type who wakes up before her alarm, gets ready, and rushes out the door for work. But that morning she was running late and completely stressed. "I'm already behind," she muttered while throwing things into her bag. Then she grabbed her keys and rushed out the door. "Love you," she called quickly. The door slammed. I heard her car start a few seconds later. And that's when I noticed something sitting on the kitchen counter. Her phone. She had forgotten it. Now, before anyone jumps on me, no, I had never gone through her phone before in our entire relationship. Not once. I always believed if you reach that point, the trust is already broken. But standing there in the kitchen, staring at the phone she never let out of her sight lately, after everything that had already happened, I just had this horrible feeling in my stomach. I told myself I was only going to check one thing. If there was nothing suspicious, I'd put it down and forget about it. Simple. Her phone wasn't locked, which honestly surprised me. The first thing I saw was a notification on the screen. A text message. From a contact saved as Mike Work. The message preview said, "Last night was fun. When can I see you again?" I felt my chest go cold. For a moment I just stood there frozen, staring at that single sentence. Then another message came in, right in front of me. Also, "Did your husband suspect anything?" That's the moment my hands started shaking. Because suddenly the bar night didn't look like a misunderstanding anymore. It looked like something much bigger. And when I opened that conversation, I realized this wasn't a one-time thing. Not even close. What I found in those messages made my stomach drop in a way I can't fully explain. Because it meant my wife hadn't just been lying to me once. She had been lying to me for months. And the way she talked to this guy, it was like she was a completely different person. I shouldn't have kept reading. Honestly, part of me wishes I had just put the phone down right then. Because once you see certain things, you can't unsee them. But at that moment curiosity and dread completely took over. I opened the conversation with Mike Work. The first thing I noticed was that the messages didn't start recently. They went back months. Scrolling up felt like falling deeper and deeper into a hole I couldn't climb out of. At first the messages were casual. Work jokes. Complaints about their boss. Memes. The kind of conversation coworkers have when they're bored during the day. But after a few weeks the tone changed. The messages started getting personal. Inside jokes. Flirting. Late-night conversations. And then one message hit me like a truck. From my wife. "I swear talking to you is the best part of my day." I kept scrolling. More messages. More flirting. Then another one from her. "I wish we had met before I got married." My hands were shaking at this point. Because this wasn't some drunken mistake at a bar. This was something that had been building for a long time. And it got worse. A lot worse. About 2 months into the conversation, the messages turned openly sexual. I'm not going to repeat everything I read, but let's just say they weren't subtle. Photos were exchanged. Plans were made. One message from him said, "Hotel again next week?" And her response was, "Yes, same place. Thursday works." Thursday. I actually checked the date. That message had been sent 3 weeks ago. Suddenly a bunch of random things from the past months started making sense. The work conferences. The late nights. The sudden interest in buying new clothes for the office. It all lined up perfectly. I kept scrolling, feeling more sick with every message. Then I saw something that made my heart sink even lower. A message from him from 2 nights ago, the night Eric saw them at the bar. "You looked amazing tonight." Her reply, "Worth the risk. Worth the risk." Not "sorry I lied to my husband." Not "I feel guilty." Just "worth the risk." That sentence replayed in my head over and over while I stood in the kitchen holding her phone. But the real gut punch came a few messages later. Because that's when I realized something I hadn't even considered yet. This guy didn't just know about me. He laughed about me. And the worst part? So did my wife. I kept scrolling even though every part of me wanted to stop. It felt like watching my own life get rewritten by two people who clearly didn't respect me at all. Then I saw a message from Mike that made my stomach twist. "Does your husband ever suspect anything?" My wife replied almost immediately. "He's clueless." Clueless. That word hit harder than everything else. Because I realized she wasn't just lying to me. She was confident that I'd never figure it out. Mike responded with a laughing emoji and wrote, "Poor guy." And then my wife replied with something that honestly broke something inside me. "He's predictable. As long as I say it's work, he never questions it." I had to sit down at the kitchen table after reading that. 9 years together. 6 years married. And this is how she talked about me to another man. Like I was some kind of idiot she had figured out how to manipulate. I kept scrolling. There were messages about their hotel meetups. Inside jokes about sneaking around. Complaints about how annoying it was when she had to come home early because I was expecting her. At one point Mike wrote, "One day you're just going to leave him, right?" My chest tightened reading that. Because part of me hoped, stupidly, that she would defend our marriage somehow. Instead she replied, "Maybe. I'm just figuring things out." Figuring things out. While sleeping with someone else behind my back. But the thing that really shocked me came next. Because suddenly the conversation shifted to something that made the situation even more complicated. Mike wrote, "You still coming this weekend?" She replied, "Yeah." I told him it's a work training. I checked the date. The message had been sent yesterday. This weekend. My wife had told me just 2 days ago that she had a mandatory 2-day work training out of town starting Saturday morning. She even complained about it. Said she didn't want to go. Said it would be boring. But according to these messages, there was no training. They had planned a weekend together. A full weekend. Hotel. 2 nights. No interruptions. That's when I realized something terrifying. If I hadn't accidentally seen her phone that morning, she would have packed a bag tomorrow, kissed me goodbye, and gone to spend the entire weekend with this guy. And I would have believed every word. At that moment my shock started turning into something else. Anger. Real anger. But I still wasn't ready to confront her. Because right then I realized something important. If I played this carefully, I could catch her lying to my face again. And this time I'd have everything I needed. After reading those messages, I carefully put her phone back exactly where it had been. My heart was still racing. Part of me wanted to call her immediately and just blow everything up right then. But another part of me, the calmer, colder part, told me to wait. If I confronted her right away, she would deny everything. I knew that already. She'd twist the story, gaslight me, maybe even delete the evidence. But if I stayed quiet, I could see how far she was willing to go. So that evening when she came home from work, I acted normal again. Painfully normal. We ate dinner together. She talked about some coworker drama like nothing in the world was wrong. At one point she even laughed about something and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. Meanwhile, I kept thinking about those messages. About the hotel. About the weekend she had planned with him. Eventually I brought it up casually. "So, that work training this weekend," I said while washing dishes. "Still happening?" She didn't even hesitate. "Yeah," she said. "Unfortunately." Then she started complaining about it. Apparently it was in another city about 2 hours away. Some boring company seminar. She said she'd probably be stuck in meetings all day Saturday and Sunday. I asked a few small questions. Just enough to see if her story would change. "What hotel are they putting you in?" "Oh, I think the Riverside Conference Hotel," she said quickly. "Are other people from your team going?" Yeah, a few. Everything came out smoothly. No nervousness. No pause. Just another lie delivered with complete confidence. And that's when I realized something unsettling. She had probably told this story before. Maybe not about this exact weekend, but about other work trips. Which made me start wondering how many of those late nights and conferences had actually been with Mike. The next day, Friday, things got even stranger. She started packing for the trip. Right in front of me, and what she packed didn't look like someone preparing for a boring work seminar. At all. She packed dresses. Nice ones. Not business clothes. Then heels. Then makeup she almost never used for work. At one point she even held up 2 different outfits in front of the mirror and asked me, "Which one looks better?" I remember just standing there staring at her, trying to process the situation, because she was asking her husband which dress looked better. For the weekend she was planning to spend cheating on him. I picked one randomly. She smiled. "Good choice," she said. That night she told me she needed to leave early in the morning. Around 7 a.m. I nodded like everything was normal. But inside my head, a plan had already started forming. Because I had absolutely no intention of letting her disappear for an entire weekend with that guy. Not without consequences. And what happened the next morning was something I don't think she ever expected. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, those messages replayed in my head. Her calling me clueless. Them laughing about me. Planning their little weekend together like I didn't even exist. By 5:30 a.m. I was already awake. My wife got up around 6:15, showered, and started getting ready for her training. She seemed almost excited, humming while doing her makeup. That alone made my stomach twist. Around 6:50 she grabbed her bag and suitcase. "All right," she said, walking over and giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. "See you Sunday night." Sunday night, like she was just going on a boring business trip. "Drive safe," I said. She smiled and walked out the door. I waited about 30 seconds after I heard her car start. Then I grabbed my jacket, my keys, and left. I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing. I wanted to see where she actually went. She drove exactly the direction she had told me. First, for about 15 minutes. Then she took an exit that had absolutely nothing to do with the city where her training was supposed to be. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I stayed a few cars back so she wouldn't notice me. About 20 minutes later, she pulled into the parking lot of a shopping center. Not a conference center. Not a hotel. Just a regular parking lot with a coffee shop and a few stores. She parked near the edge of the lot. I parked across the street where she couldn't see me. For about 5 minutes nothing happened. Then another car pulled in. Black SUV. Parked right next to her. A guy stepped out. Tall. Dark hair. Even from a distance I knew immediately. Mike. He walked straight to her car and opened the passenger door like this was something they had done many times before. My wife got out. And before I could even process it, they hugged. Not a quick hug. The kind where you hold someone tight. Then they kissed. Right there in the parking lot. Like they were a normal couple starting a road trip together. That was the moment the last piece of denial inside me died. Because seeing a message is one thing. Seeing your wife kiss another man in real life hits differently. I sat there in the car for a minute just staring. My chest felt tight. My hands were shaking. Then they both got into his SUV and drove away, together, probably heading straight to that hotel they had been talking about. I could have followed them. Part of me wanted to, but instead I did something else. Something that, looking back now, completely changed the direction of everything that happened next. Because instead of chasing them, I called someone, and that phone call set off a chain of events my wife definitely didn't see coming. I sat in my car for a good minute after they drove away. My brain felt completely overloaded. Anger, shock, disbelief, all mixed together. Part of me wanted to slam the gas and follow them straight to the hotel. Kick the door in. Expose everything right there. But another part of me, the part that had spent the last few days watching her lie without hesitation, told me to slow down. If I confronted her now, she'd just spin another story. So instead, I pulled out my phone and called someone I trusted. My friend Eric. The same guy who had accidentally spotted her at the bar earlier that week. He answered almost immediately. "Hey man, what's up?" I took a deep breath. "You were right," I said. There was a pause. "About what?" "My wife," I said quietly. "She's cheating." Another pause. "Shit," he muttered. I explained everything quickly. The phone, the messages, the fake work trip, watching her meet Mike in the parking lot. Eric was silent for a few seconds after I finished. Then he said something I didn't expect. "Dude, you need to document this." "What do you mean?" "Proof," he said. "Screenshots, photos, everything." At first I didn't understand why he was pushing that so hard. Then he reminded me of something I hadn't even thought about yet. Divorce. If things went that direction, which at that moment felt very likely, having proof of an affair could matter a lot. Not just emotionally, legally. That thought alone made the whole situation feel even heavier. So I drove home. The house felt incredibly quiet when I walked inside. Her suitcase was gone. Her car was gone. But everything else was exactly the same. Her coffee mug still sitting on the counter. Her jacket hanging by the door. It felt surreal knowing that while I was standing there in our house, she was probably already on the way to a hotel with another man. I went straight to my laptop and started thinking. I still had one advantage. She had no idea I knew anything, which meant if I played this right, I could get even more proof. So I did something risky. I texted her. "Hope the drive to the training isn't too bad." About 10 minutes later she replied. "Traffic sucks, but I'm almost there." Another lie. I stared at the message for a few seconds. Then I wrote back. "Which hotel did you say again?" Her response came quickly. "Riverside Conference Hotel." I actually laughed out loud when I read that, because at that moment I was sitting in front of my computer looking at the messages on her phone from earlier that week. The hotel she had planned with Mike wasn't Riverside. It was a completely different place, which meant she was still lying, without hesitation, without guilt. And that's when I realized something that honestly made me feel a strange kind of calm. My marriage, as I thought it existed, was already over. The only question now was how I was going to handle the confrontation. And trust me, the confrontation that eventually happened was not quiet. Not at all. Because something unexpected happened later that same day. Something that made the situation explode much sooner than I planned. My plan had been simple. Let her spend the weekend thinking everything was normal. Collect more evidence. Talk to a lawyer on Monday. Then confront her with everything at once. Calm, controlled, strategic. But life rarely goes according to plan. Around 3 p.m. that same day, something unexpected happened. My phone rang. The caller ID showed my wife's name. For a second I just stared at the screen, confused. Why was she calling? I answered. "Hey," I said. Her voice sounded slightly tense. "Hey, quick question," she said. "What's up? Did you go through my phone this morning?" My stomach dropped. I forced my voice to stay calm. "No." "Why?" There was a pause on the line. "A few messages are missing," she said slowly. That's when I realized my mistake. When I had been scrolling through her phone that morning, I must have accidentally marked something as read or triggered some notification change. Something small, but enough for her to notice. And suddenly she was suspicious. "I mean, it's probably nothing," she continued. "Just looked weird." My heart was pounding again. "Yeah, I didn't touch it," I said. "You left it on the counter though." Another pause. "Right?" she said. Her tone had changed slightly. Not full panic, but cautious, like she was trying to figure something out. Then she said something that caught me off guard. "Actually, I might come home tonight." That made my brain freeze for a second. "Thought the training was all weekend?" "Yeah, but they might end early tomorrow," she said quickly. "So I might just drive back tonight instead of staying." That explanation made absolutely no sense. She had just started the training a few hours ago. Why would it suddenly end? Unless she thought I might know something. "Okay," I said carefully. "I'll let you know," she replied. Then she hung up. I sat there staring at my phone again, because something had clearly shifted. Either she was getting paranoid, or something had happened between her and Mike. And about 2 hours later, I got another message that confirmed things were about to get very messy, because the text she sent next was completely unexpected. And it changed the entire direction of the situation. About 2 hours after that call, my phone buzzed again. It was her. "Hey, don't freak out. But something came up. I'll be home in a few hours." My heart dropped. That vague "something came up" line was classic her. Always vague, always mysterious, always designed to avoid answering questions. A few hours later, she walked in. The house smelled like perfume. Strong perfume, not her usual scent. Not even close. It was the kind of scent someone wears when they want attention. My stomach churned instantly. I was standing by the kitchen counter, pretending to read something on my laptop. She walked in, dropped her bag, and gave me a quick, casual smile. "Hey," she said, like nothing had changed. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. Really looked. And suddenly, I realized I was done pretending. "Where were you?" I asked. My voice quieter than I expected, but filled with controlled anger. She hesitated just a fraction of a second before answering. "Oh, just something came up with work," she said, rolling her eyes. I could see the slight twitch in her hand. She was lying. I knew it. I walked closer, laptop forgotten, and said, "Don't bother lying. I know about the weekend. I know about Mike. And I know the messages you've been sending." Her face went pale. Then, almost immediately, her usual mask snapped back. "Whoa, what are you talking about?" she said, her voice sharp. "You're imagining things. Stop accusing me for no reason." I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm. "I'm not imagining anything. I saw the messages. I saw everything. The texts, the plans, the hotel. And I know you've been lying to me for months." Her jaw tightened. She stared at me like she couldn't believe I was saying these things. "Months? That's insane," she said. Her tone was defensive, clipped, almost like she was rehearsed. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're being paranoid. Totally paranoid." I felt a surge of anger mixed with disbelief. "Paranoid?" I shouted. "You told me you had a work training this weekend, and I watched you meet him in the parking lot this morning. He's the reason you've been lying about every single late night, every conference, every story you've ever told me." For a moment, she froze. Then she laughed. Not nervously, not apologetically, but a cold, harsh laugh. "You're ridiculous," she said. "Seriously, how dramatic can you get?" It was the first time I realized something terrifying. She had no guilt, no shame, just defiance. And that moment, that laugh, it changed everything. Because from that point on, I knew this wasn't going to be a normal fight or an argument I could talk my way out of. This was a confrontation that would break our marriage, or break me. Her laugh still echoes in my head when I think about it. That cold, sharp sound, like she was daring me to do something. Like she knew I had no power over her anymore. I felt the anger boiling, but I also felt something else. An awful, sinking sadness. All those years, all the little fights we had, the laughter we shared, the vacations, the stupid inside jokes. It was all built on lies. Every memory tainted now. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, and said, "Look, I don't know what you want to do. I don't even know if this marriage matters to you anymore. But I do know this. I can't live like this, and I can't let you keep lying to me." Her response? A shrug. "Well, that's your problem then, isn't it?" she snapped. "You can leave if you want. I don't care." That cut deeper than I expected. Not the words themselves, but the attitude. The fact that she could say that so casually after everything. I realized then that she wasn't just reckless. She was selfish, and she'd been hiding behind excuses and lies for months, manipulating me without a second thought. And yet, even with all the anger and betrayal, there was still a part of me that ached. For what we used to be, for the love I thought we shared. I asked one last question, my voice trembling slightly. "Why? Why him? Why this Why lie to me for so long? Her eyes narrowed. She crossed her arms and said, almost mockingly, why does it matter to you so much? You've been boring me for years. I need excitement. I'm allowed to have it. Don't act like you've been perfect either. That was the final punch. All the excuses, all the justifications, all the manipulations laid bare in one sentence. I felt a wave of nausea and rage. I wanted to scream, throw something, hit the wall, anything to release the tension building inside me. But I couldn't. Instead, I sat down, closed my eyes, and tried to process what had just happened. Because in that moment, I knew something important. This wasn't just about cheating. It was about the complete erosion of trust. And once trust is gone, there's almost nothing left to hold a marriage together. I spent the rest of that evening alone in the living room, letting the silence fill the house. Every little sound, the hum of the fridge, the ticking clock, even my own breathing, felt louder than normal. I realized then how deep the emotional impact of her betrayal was. It wasn't just sadness or anger. It was grief. Grief for the person I thought she was, for the marriage I thought we had, and for the life I thought we were building together. And I knew the next step, the hardest step, was coming. The step where I had to decide whether to try to salvage this, or finally accept the truth and move on. That night I barely slept. My mind kept replaying her words, her laugh, the way she looked at me like I was nothing. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and utterly exhausted. But somewhere beneath all that anger and hurt, a quiet clarity started to form. I realized something fundamental. I couldn't stay in a marriage where I was treated like a fool, where every word could be a lie, and where the person I loved didn't respect me enough to be honest. The next morning I made a plan. Not a vengeful plan, not a reactive one, a rational plan. Step 1. Document everything. The texts, the messages, the photos Eric had sent, everything from her phone. I took screenshots, saved emails, and even made notes of suspicious patterns. I knew I needed concrete evidence if this went beyond confrontation. Step 2. Decide what I wanted. Did I want to try to repair the marriage? Or was it already too far gone? After staring at her perfume-scented suitcase, thinking about her weekend with Mike, and remembering how easily she had lied, I knew the answer. This wasn't salvageable. Not without her genuine remorse, and she didn't have any. Step 3. Prepare for confrontation. I didn't want yelling or chaos. I wanted the truth out in the open, clear and undeniable, with no chance for her to twist it. By mid-afternoon, she came home. She didn't look guilty. She looked smug, almost like nothing had changed. I stayed calm. I asked her to sit down. I laid out everything, the photos, the messages, the lies, the fake training trip. I watched her face carefully. At first, she tried her usual deflection. Dude, you're paranoid. You've been reading into things too much. I let her talk. Then I held up my phone with the screenshots. This is the truth. You can lie all you want, but I've got everything. Every text, every plan, every lie you've told for months. Her reaction shocked me. Not fear, not regret, just annoyance. You're insane, she said sharply. This is ridiculous. You're overreacting. That was it. No apology, no explanation, no hint of guilt. Just her usual sharpness, laced with arrogance. At that moment, I realized I didn't need to say anything else. The truth had already spoken for itself. And I knew exactly what I had to do next. After laying out all the evidence, I sat back and watched her. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I'd built a life with, was sitting there in front of me like a stranger. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She didn't even try to justify herself beyond the usual excuses about boredom and needing excitement. Her sharpness, her lies, her selfishness, all of it was exposed, and yet she acted like none of it mattered. I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief because I finally knew the full truth. Sorrow because what I thought was love had been shattered. I told her calmly, I can't do this anymore. I can't be married to someone who lies, cheats, and doesn't care about the trust we had. I'm done. She rolled her eyes. "You're being dramatic," she said. "If you leave over this, that's your choice." And that was it. No guilt, no remorse, no attempt to make amends. Just her cold indifference. I packed a few things that night: clothes, important documents, my laptop, and prepared to stay with a friend. I needed space to process, to breathe, and to start untangling myself from the life I thought we shared. The emotional impact was brutal. I went through the stages rapidly: anger, disbelief, sadness, grief. Every memory of her was now tinged with betrayal. The anger burned, but underneath it was the profound sadness of realizing I had trusted someone completely, only to have that trust shattered. But amidst the heartbreak, I felt a quiet clarity. This wasn't a failure on my part. This wasn't something I caused. She chose to lie, cheat, and manipulate. That was her choice, not mine. And recognizing that allowed me, finally, to start letting go of guilt and shame. By the next morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to fight for a marriage where trust didn't exist anymore. I wasn't going to try to rebuild with someone who had repeatedly shown they didn't respect me. I was walking away, not just from her, but from the life that had been built on lies. Walking away wasn't easy. Every step out the door felt heavy, like leaving a part of my life behind that I didn't want to lose. But I knew it was the right thing. I couldn't stay in a marriage where love had been replaced by lies and selfishness. The weeks that followed were a roller coaster. Some days I felt anger so intense it made my chest ache. Other days, the sadness hit like a wave I couldn't escape. I questioned everything about myself: why I didn't see the signs sooner, why I trusted so completely, why I let her words manipulate me for so long. But slowly, I started to see the other side. I realized that her actions were a reflection of who she was, not of my worth. I remembered that for years I had tried to be understanding, supportive, and loyal, and I had been. Her betrayal didn't erase that. I started therapy. I leaned on friends who didn't judge me, who didn't blame me for her choices. I allowed myself to grieve, properly, fully, without shame. And bit by bit, the anger began to soften, replaced by clarity and self-respect. I learned some hard lessons. Trust is fragile, and it takes both people to maintain it. A lies, no matter how small at first, can snowball into something irreparable. Sometimes love isn't enough when respect and honesty are gone. If there's one piece of advice I could give to anyone in a similar situation, it's this: pay attention to the little things. Listen to your gut. Don't let someone's charm, excuses, or personality tricks blind you to the truth. And most importantly, don't sacrifice your self-respect for the illusion of a relationship. I can't say I'm over it completely. I don't think you ever fully get over someone you trusted so completely. But I can say I'm stronger, wiser, and more careful about who I let into my life. And someday I'll trust again, just not blindly. Because betrayal leaves scars, but it also leaves lessons. And that's what I intend to carry forward.